to Stan in Pennsylvania. Hey, Stan, you are on the air with Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, how are you?
Doing just fine. Been talking about tulpas and string theory.
Well,
so, kind of cool.
Narrative universes.
Yeah, this has been an interesting night.
Yeah.
Before I say anything else, though, I wanted to say hi to Jamie.
Hey.
I think you're great.
Oh,
I've loved your work on Talk Heathen, and I really love your perspective, and I wish we could see more of you these days.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll start taking off clothes.
That was funny. Wow.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. Yeah. What did you want to talk about on the show?
Okay, so I had only just thought of this because I was watching a different show on YouTube earlier, and a topic came up about like the Confederate flag, and those who think of it as just like a symbol, a cultural symbol, right?
Yes.
And then others who look at it as a symbol of hate. I had so the host of the show that I was watching, they had a disagreement about like how this should be handled. One host said that like it would be interesting to see like a conversation in which you brought on the people who were in support of the flag, right, and the others who thought it was offensive, and just talk it out, and maybe if you showed the people who are in favor of the flag that like this Confederate flag is offensive for these reasons, maybe we could see progress, find out exactly why they support it and all that stuff, right? But then another host disagreed with that, and they were saying how we do too much coddling of racists, and how like doing something like that would just give them a platform to spread their ideas, and that like our society in general has been centered around white supremacy, and that like there's plenty of opportunities for them to learn, and that it shouldn't be our job to be educating, which I agree on that part. It shouldn't be our job to educate white people about racism and bigotry in general. Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I sort of it's not for everyone, but I would sort of, there's a part of my brain that goes, no, if you want something done right, do it yourself. In terms of trying to educate and have productive conversations with a person whose mind you wish to change, or at very least whose perspective you want to inform, right? This idea of, well, it's not our job. Sure, I don't see it necessarily as anyone being morally or ethically or socially obligated to have these discussions, et cetera, but that's very different than saying one shouldn't do that, right? Like, I'm not going to compel and tell someone, oh, well, you want to be active and encountering racism or ideas of white supremacy, but you don't want to talk to white supremacists. Shame upon you. No, there's many ways to go about this. The question of whether or not, for example, if I talked to a neo-Nazi or whatever, recorded that interview and posted it. Not something that I plan on doing, but I need a hypothetical to talk about. So a person that would say, you are wrong to do that, can't say, I'm not obligated to, can't say that they are not obligated to do the same as an argument. In terms of having conversations and attempting to inform discourse and public debate, not everyone does it the same way, is what I would say. Certainly there's wrong ways to go about that. Handing a microphone and a huge stage and 2 hours of a giant audience to the reincarnated corpse of Hitler or whatever is very different than, trolling people on whatever it is, Discord, and there's a million things in between there. So I'm sort of wondering if you draw the line somewhere, or if you've thought specifically what your position on this is.
So, Stan, I'm assuming the reason why you're calling is because you want us to talk about like the utility of talking to bigots or
That's a
people
good way of saying
who might disagree with what we have to say, right? Like, you kind of want our take on it.
Yes, yes. So I was just explaining the situation
Right.
because I saw it from both ends. I thought they both had really valid points. But I'm leaning towards what you're saying, Jamie. I'm personally, I'm black, and the idea. I mean, I really liked the one host when she said that so many times black experiences and people of color aren't centered in these conversations, right? It's the experience of white people and how they view race, right? And it's us kind of like just trying to convince them on the edges, hold their hands, like, okay, like this is wrong for this and this and reasons, like these beliefs are bad for this and that reason, and like leading them, to the promised land rather than talking about the experiences of people who are bigoted. And also, this also, works for homophobia as well,
Yeah.
I think a lot of those same dynamics are there on that end. So I could see it from her end, but I lean more to what you're saying, Jamie, and that at least for those who are prepared to do so, right? Because this is an emotionally taxing activity, right? Is that like I think we have to engage people. I think if we don't, like I think there are those who can't be convinced, right? Clearly, right? They're hard. Their beliefs have been calcified, and we can't do anything about that, right? But there's a spectrum, and I think there are people on the edges who we can get to, but they've never heard these perspectives. Like what we think is obvious, like obvious information and easily accessible information about like the truth about the different races and their intelligences or something like that, or just that gay people aren't, raging pedophiles or something, or whatever they happen to believe, like that seems obvious to us, but for others, they've never heard it,
Yes. So I would say, Stan, this issue, what you're talking about, the utility of talking about these things, probably one of the most important issues of the 21st century that we know of so far.
Yeah.
I would say in terms of our politics, at least right now, in terms of
in America, at least.
Because what we have now in the information age is everybody has a platform.
Yep.
Everybody has a platform.
Even
and
your Aunt
people's
Sue.
ideas can go anywhere, all over the place. Why are we seeing less people vaccinate their kids? Because the idea of anti-vaccination has spread to the point where it hadn't before in ways that we previously had not calculated. And this is because of
the barrier to mass information has been utterly destroyed and removed.
Yep.
It used to be that you had to be incredibly well connected and very, very rich, at least in America, to influence public opinion. And that's why the newspaper magnates basically...
it's not just 3 news organizations that are on your TV now. We've got multiple sources, and even with the monopolization of a lot of that, we're still coming up with independent sources who are giving their own perspectives and their own things. So it's like, like what do we do? How do we, if we want to be good, ethical people, how do we need to approach this subject when we talk about issues that can cause serious consequences for the human rights and just the harm of people in general? And I'm not someone who's going to pretend like they have all the answers, but
I would say there's also a difference between talking to someone and making sure that there's a productive conversation. Because there's people that will say there are no productive conversations with a bigot, and that may be true for that's almost certainly true for certain individuals. And I will agree with those people that there are definitely unproductive conversations where voices are amplified.
Yeah, so like I'll say so this is a show where I like to talk about all kinds of people's ideas and stuff. But like so Jamie is gay. Let's say surprise. In case you didn't know. If we were to have a conversation with somebody right now whose threats to Jamie, whose beliefs, like
if Tommy McMurtry called in,
if Tommy McMurtry called in, or like if somebody called in and their voice was so powerful or influential enough to where that could cause harm to Jamie's life, whether it be people harassing him online, harassing him in real life, or whatever, like that's not a conversation I want to have with anybody, because that's I want to protect that. But if plus McMurtry, in particular, if we're naming specifics, there's bad actors. There's always going to be bad actors, and how we suss out who's a bad actor and who's not, that's a complicated process in itself too. But
I'd say,
I was just saying, if someone is willing to have who is previously, because I held beliefs that one would call bigoted about gay people at one point in my life. And I have changed, but I did not get the change until I was open to other people's perspectives. And how could I be open to other people's perspectives until I've heard the experiences of other people?
Yeah.
And you have to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Like at some point you do. You can't just ignore it because people are going to get it from other places if you don't talk to them. So,
it's true. There's 2 points on there that I'd like to just piggyback on quickly, which, many people won't believe that I can do, but here we go.
Yeah.
One is sort of, yes, civil discourse requires a civil format, a civil stage, or public square, if you will, and a civil society. And attempting to have a civil discourse or a civil conversation when people are chanting and protesting, that particular moment is not the best because human beings are emotional,
get riled up,
etc. And then also, if you're thinking about, I want to affect the way that other people think, and you're thinking about, okay, how are those people going to change their minds? I don't think it's helped by saying, well, I will not inform them of my opinion. They will go to the people that are willing to talk to them, and that's good. Well, the people that are willing to talk to them will always be, for all positions, people that agree with them, and in that instance, only people that you disagree with about how to go about things will be reaching out and talking to them.
Yeah.
So you have, if you say that you will not put your opinion out there or deliver it to a person, you've said, okay, well then I won't inform them of things that I think that they should accept as true. And one of the best ways to get someone to consider your position is to facilitate a dialogue where you're willing to hear what they think as well.
But, so Jamie, what do you think though when we have national debates about climate change? And we put that on CNN or something? Because
I think what is necessary is also to cultivate and understand, because at that point you're talking about how American society has adopted a level of anti-intellectualism that is dangerous.
That's true. But but if we're putting that I think you would agree with me that not all ideas are on the public square though.
No,
right?
Of course not.
Like some we shouldn't even pretend like there's a veneer of a debate on because it gives the idea that there's something worth discussing. Like your human rights, Jamie. Your ability to live and to love whoever you want. That I don't feel like that's a question that we should be exploring.
That's true.
Right?
One of the things that happens with this is there's a phrase, is this up for debate? Right?
Yeah.
Which is used colloquial to mean, is there doubt about the conclusion? Right? For example, there is not reasonable doubt about the shape of the Earth. And now all of the lines will fill. But there is not. However, that isn't something that's going to tell me, oh, well, you should never, ever, ever speak to a person that believes that the Earth is flat, even if you have to do it in a setting where there's an audience for you, right? I wouldn't necessarily seek that out because I'm not sufficiently informed. The damage from that is minimal, but I would say that you would still want to handle that delicately, even though it's not damaging. When it comes to things that are damaging, like what Dan is talking about, that's where you get to, no, for civil discourse, you need a civil society. The reason that free speech is important, and the reason, as stated by people that deliberately got together and founded this country, their motivation was, no, speech that is productive for discourse and opinions is protected. That was their opinion. They did not have if you have an idea, you get to say it approach to free speech at all. And actually, really quickly, some of them sort of, in the policies they tried to enact, didn't hold up to their ideals, but the idea of, all ideas deserve a platform, a complete giving into the bias towards fairness. Oh, well, you've had your say. Someone that disagrees with you can have their say, is not valid. And so I agree with that. Not everything is up for debate, right? Or should be presented in a way that implies, it's a seesaw with the fulcrum at the center about whether or not we have these ideas. But discussion, for example, about well, what is it that white supremacists believe? And addressing those ideas, I think, is very different than going, oh, well, let's put up a debate stage and assign speaking times to two people.
Okay. Let's see what Stan has to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to your very last point there, Jamie, I think it actually goes back to what that female host was trying to say, is that like I think it's like very well known what a white supremacist, for instance, believes, right? Like that's not like there's not much room to grow on that. But like again, like if you frame a debate in that way, you're framing it from the perspective of the oppressor rather than the oppressed. So again, I'm just arguing for this woman, but I think that's how she would respond to that. And also, I feel like I'm open myself to more dialogue, right? I think that's a good thing. But I think a person who isn't open to that type of dialogue on these type of issues is underestimating the power of both ignorance and cultural inertia, right? So you can see this on two different fronts, right? So in this case, for the Confederate flag and maybe bigotry in general, and also for religion, though I'm not equating the two, of course, but that the people who have grown up in those environments, right? You have a family that says the Confederate flag is just about heritage, and people are trying to take away from that heritage, and the Confederacy was just about states' rights, nothing else, right? And also for people who grow up in a environment that says, Jesus Christ is, our Lord and Savior, God is real, there's no question about it, right? They can grow up in an environment and in communities that all believe the same thing, right? And at no point do they take a moment to question it, right? A point that came up on the show is that well, you can, Google these things, right? You have more information than ever before, so you can find out. But people may not do that, right? Like, if I had been on the show, I would have said that, when you're in a situation where everyone is telling you the sky is green, from your mother to your father to your friends to your teachers, right? Some people aren't going to look up and check to see if it's blue, right? People will accept those things, and it takes someone to break into that bubble and let them know, right? Yeah. So I think that would be the best way of handling it. But I don't want to minimize how damaging going through these conversations can be, right? For the people who have been oppressed, right? Yeah. It is emotionally taxing, right? As a Black person, just moving through the world passively, you're hit with plenty of racist tropes, of stereotypes, right? That hits you all the time, and you just have to deal with it. You have to learn to have a tough skin, right? But then to actively seek that out, right? Even if it's for the benefit, the greater good, right? To actively put yourself in that situation, that's a lot. That's a lot for us to ask of people. Yeah. So I don't want to minimize the position that that we shouldn't do that. That the focus should always be on the experiences of the oppressed rather than the oppressors.
Yeah, and to bring it to an experience that I think even more of us could relate to is as atheists. Mm-hmm. We are a minority in a religious sense in the United States, and it's harder for us. So I don't talk about it with all of my friends and family. Yeah. I know you don't. So it's that's another conversation where it's we, how much does our experiences matter? Because think about this, right? If you're a Christian too, and I was thinking about this as he was talking, it would be in your best interest to make sure that I didn't have a voice as an atheist. Because if you actually believe that I could bring people harm in the sense that I could make them think that God's not real and that they're going to hell, you would want to actively stop me and make sure I don't have a platform.
Yeah. No, I understand why the NIFB has come to the conclusion that LGBTQIA plus community should die, right? And that informs my understanding of their arguments and their thinking. And while it's kind of a bad example, because as we've addressed, there's people that are less likely to be persuaded or change their mind. Knowing why people come to the conclusions that they do and addressing them, I think, is important. But I agree with you that ignoring the fact, like, hey, racism is a thing. I was trying to find a way of saying that didn't sound dismissive, because I'm really, really not trying to be dismissive.
No.
Because I just talked about Nazis and the NIFB
and I'm switching
and all this
shit. By the way, that's not to minimize black issues, because I know you specifically talked about that. Like that's just something that we can relate to in the context of our experience a bit more broadly. Like that's actually like one of the things, Jamie. Like when I first started Truth Wanted was like, do I really want, because like, you know, when I was proposing to do the show and everything, I was like, but I would be the host, and I'm just a straight white guy. Like, do we want to have another straight white guy talk about his experiences on the thing? Because like we want to bring in diversity of perspectives and stuff too.
There's a value to that. So I don't think that you having a show detracts from other shows necessarily.
No.
Although people have a finite amount of time to watch shows.
That's true, yes.
So you
and
can
resources go into...
You can make that argument. But I think it's important to get a diversity of experience, and that's also a certain diversity of viewpoint, represented. Obviously, very different in terms of who you give or who you make a show with is a completely different.
The question comes to, right? It's like, how much are we willing to invest in that diversity? It comes to the point of like,
to be clear, you're talking about diversity of opinion.
Opinion, not people's, right? But talking about like, you know, I had Ocean here as a guest host at the time. And he believes there's a gods. I would love to have more guest hosts that believe that, and so we could have that dialogue. There are some people who would disagree with me and say like that's not a good thing to do.
Yeah,
and would say like, oh, we can't be on the same playing field as these people.
Yeah,
but like
I honestly name some of them.
Right, but it's like I honestly like I guess my perspective is I don't feel that way. Like I feel like I would want now, but I do have limits though. Like I wouldn't want to have.
You wouldn't go, all right, Ocean, now for an hour and a half, tell people what you believe. And sit quietly. Yeah.
Also, like we can also explore a coalition of allyship and not necessarily come to the same conclusions about, because we both recognize that we're minorities in a greater religious Christian culture, you know.
Sure.
So
right.
Like, there's that conversation too.
There's that. But I would say, like, it goes sort of without saying, but I'll say it anyway. It's easier to be a white atheist in this country than it is to be black and believe in God, would be an opinion that I hold firmly. If for no other reason than you can fake believing.
Yes.
And it's
that's true too.
You know, I've never asked anyone who's tried to fake being white. Although I guess there are people that I don't know.
I mean, there are people
I don't know what I'm talking about.
There are people
so
who
I do
are
my best not to.
Like biracial people and even people who are white passing will take on mannerisms of white people. So that's faking being white.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I have strong opinion. Well, I guess I have a lot to say about the diversity of opinion and discourse and discussion, but I think I address the broad subject less, and certainly subjects like this less, because I have less to say. I'm less informed and are not a great advocate for.
We got to move on. We got to get on to some other calls here. But Stan, thanks so much for bringing this topic up. I don't know if it was quite the direction you want to explore. Hopefully, we answered what you wanted to hear from us.
Yeah. But even though, ironically, we did most of the talking.
I know. And then,
and you were emphasizing that we should.
You're right, though. Dang.
Yeah.
But anyway, Stan. We'll give some more topics and time to this particular because
call in again.
I love talking about this kind of stuff in particular because there's a lot of perspectives on it. Next year when we get started in 2020 again. So thanks again, Stan, for calling in.
Dan, it's always great talking with you.
Yeah.
We always have great conversations. And Jamie, I'm apparently just learning that you're homosexual. I am shocked and chagrined. I'm going to take back all the kind of things I said about you before. But no, great. It was really great talking with you.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Stan. I look forward to talking to you again. So more in the future. We are
calling on a week when I'm not here to talk over you for half the...
Yeah, I know, right? It's even in our discussions, we can minimize, like, it's all over the place.